Anyways, how are you guys doing? Glad to see you guys. You guys look awesome. Is it raining outside yet? No? As a pastor, when you hear rain's coming, you're always concerned that people think they melt if they go out in the rain. So you're always expecting a low attendance and so forth. But we're so glad to see your faces here. My name is Jeremy. I'm the lead pastor here at Vertical Life, and we're really excited about what God is doing in this community. And right now, we're in the middle of a series called Community. And if you've missed the first two, I encourage you to go to our app or go to our website and listen to those so you can catch yourself up. We have one more message on this, and I'll be next week, so you don't want to miss that. And we'll open up in our community groups and give you the opportunity to kind of plug in and get involved, and we'll have actually a community group fair out there where you can kind of go around and see who or what you want to get connected with. So I encourage you to be here next week. So let's get started. So I want to tell you a story about this guy. His name is Russell Conwell. So they're going to pull up a picture of him right here, and there he is. I don't know about you, but I feel like old pictures kind of creep me out a little bit. Does it creep anyone else out? Like, I kind of feel like their eyes are following me. Like, no matter where I go, he's watching me. Right there. Anyone else feel like that ever? No? Come on, guys, respond. Anybody? But anyways, he said no. All right, I guess I'm being vulnerable on stage, and that's the last time I'll do that. But anyways, his name is Russell Conwell, and he founded Temple University. And the way he founded it is he founded it through profits from a book that he sold called Acres of Diamonds. And that book sold 7 million copies. Now that's in the 1800s that he sold 7 million copies. And so you got to realize there was no social media. It wasn't like there was some kind of campaign. There wasn't an internet. He could just like put it out there. So this is in the 1800s, and to sell 7 million copies is phenomenal. And so he actually gave about 7,000 speeches about this book, and I'm going to tell you what it's about here in a second. And from that, the profits is what he used to found or establish Temple University. And the story is he was in the Middle East, I think in the Holy Land, visiting and traveling, and he had this guide who told him a story of a true situation of a guy in South Africa who was a farmer. And this is based on a true story, and his name was Ali Hafid. And he was telling this story about this guy who was this farmer who had this plot of land. And every day he would get his ox and he would connect it to a plow, and he would plow his land, and he lived in this meager little cabin, and he just kind of lived off the land, and he felt like he wasn't really going anywhere with his life. And he heard there was rumors going on that in India people were finding diamonds and becoming super wealthy. And so he was thinking, listen, I'm tired of this way of living, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell my land, and I'm going to go to India, and I'm going to find these diamonds. Because as the story was going on, you know how stories kind of get embellished as they're passed along? Well, when it got to him, he was told that there were so many diamonds that you could go there to this place between two mountains, and it was called the Valley of the Moon. And if you went there, you could stick your hand into the river and pull up a handful of diamonds and be so rich and wealthy you could satisfy any desire of your heart. So his plan was, all right, I'm going. I'm going to sell everything. I'm headed there. I mean, who wouldn't, right? So he kisses his family goodbye, and he moves to India. And after spending all of his money, he found no diamonds, nothing. And so he was depressed and felt defeated. And so he wrote a letter to his family apologizing for spending everything, and told them the news that he found nothing. And he ended his life by throwing himself into a raging river, and he died. This is in the 1800s. Now the guy that he sold the property to, after he bought the property, got up the next day, took the same ox, the same plow, and started working the ground. Lived in the same meager house, just this little 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom cabin, and began to plow away. And while he was working, he would run into these little black rocks all over the place. And it was kind of aggravating and frustrating to him. But they kind of looked a little bit pretty. They had a little bit of a rainbow look to it if you held it to the sun just right. And one time while he was plowing, he ran into this really big one. And so he picked it up and he actually hung it over his mantle in his house, in his cabin. And since he just moved to the area, the priest was traveling around and paying his visits to different people that were moving in the area. And when he walked into this cabin, he noticed above the mantle, he saw this big stone, this big rock, and he had asked them, he said, "Where did you find that?" He said, "They're all over my land. I can't get anything accomplished without running into these things. In fact, I had to toss them to the side and just dig them up and put them in piles because I can't even build or cultivate a garden." And he goes, "Do you know what that is?" And he's like, "No, it's just a pretty rock." And he's like, "That's a diamond in the raw. And that diamond right there is worth probably $25,000. And that's in the 1800s. And from that point, he found out that his land was full of it. And it became the largest diamond field in the world. And it's still going today. And it's called a Rotunda Minefield. And the guy, this is what's crazy. So the guy left what he had with him, that field of diamonds, to pursue something that he never found, but he already had it with him in that moment. And to me, I think it's a strong illustration or even a parable for our life, because I think often what we do is we think to be satisfied that we have to leave and go find what we're looking for somewhere else. Like if you think about it, even in marriages, this is true. Like you think, well, if I had that wife, or if I had that husband, or if I had that spouse, then everything would be good. When we fail to manage the opportunities that are before us right now, or to cultivate the relationships that we have right now, if you think about it, it applies to so many different areas in our life. It applies with your job. You're complaining and whining and crying about your job, but the person beside you would say, "I would love just to have a job." And so I think what we can see from this is a powerful principle that can apply to so many areas of our life. Just learning to manage the opportunities that we have in front of us right now. But for today, in today's context, with the topic of community, I think it's true there, because I think that in this room there are relationships yet to be formed. And I believe like there's so much treasure in this room right now. And I'm not talking about like money and things like that. I'm talking about the richness of relationships. I'm talking about brotherhood and sisterhood. I'm talking about spiritual mothers and fathers, and maybe your future spouse is in here. All the single people say, "Hey." But what I'm saying is that a lot of times what we're looking for is right in the field that we're in, but it's disguised in the form of work. And what I mean by that is even taking risks. It's being vulnerable. It's investing. It's time. It's all these different things. And instead of applying the effort and being intentional in the area that we're at, we look for something else. We look for something that's easy. And this is my fear for you. My fear is that you'll spend your life chasing these acre of diamonds when you're sitting in a field of diamonds right now. That you'll spend your life looking for something and end your life still longing for something that you had before you the whole time. If you would just be faithful in the field that you're in right now. And yeah, I'm referring to church and community and relationships here, because I believe there's so much richness in this room right now. And we want things to come easy, do we not? We just want it to be easy. We just want relationships to kind of fall into place. But they don't. They take work, effort, vulnerability, all these different things. And man, I want community for you so bad, but I can't force you into it. I want community for you because I believe that that's where you'll see yourself grow. I want community for you because I want to see you become whole. I want community for you because I believe that's where you can become healthy. I want community before you because I believe that's where I believe it's the vessel that God uses to grow us and to mature us. But often we run from it and we avoid it. So what I want to do today, obviously, is talk about community. You did catch that? But I want to refer to one passage that Jesus mentioned in the book of John. And I'll be up front with you. The passage has nothing to do with community. Nothing. I mean, in fact, he's just responding to the reality that his time is coming for him to die. But what he refers to is a principle of law of nature to make his point. And that principle is a principle that we can apply to so many areas of our life, including community and being in relationships. So the passage is in John chapter 12, verse 24, and this is what it says. Jesus says, he says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth," some translations use the word planted. "Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth or is planted and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." So when I was thinking about this verse and I was thinking about community and so forth, one line that kind of stuck with me is that only planted things grow. Like, you should write that down. Only planted things grow. And I think that often in our life we see a lack of progress and development or growth in our lives, not because we do not desire it, not because God doesn't want it for us, but because we fail to plant ourselves into a community. I think some of you guys are so frustrated with the outcome of your life right now, and I would challenge you and press you if it has something to do with you not planting yourself in a Christ-centered biblical community. And to be honest, a lot of us, we run from those relationships. Because this is the thing about church and community. Like, church, our job as a church is to equip you to fulfill what God has called you to do. If you look at Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11, I didn't give it to them, but the whole role of the church is to do just that, is to equip you for the ministry that the God has given you. And so in the context of relationships, we are matured and we grow. And I believe that God wants to grow you and mature you in this house. And you are underdeveloped because we avoid those relationships. Like, I believe that the potential inside of you remains underdeveloped because we avoid those kind of relationships that will challenge us a little bit, or where we're a little bit vulnerable, right? How many people enjoy being vulnerable? Anyone? You're like, I'm not going to be vulnerable now by raising my hand. Snap, right? And so what I want to do is press on you and push on you for you to see the reality and the need for you to be in community, not just for friendship, guys, but so that you can grow and be developed into the person that God has called you to be. I mean, our whole motto here is to awaken. And what we mean by that is to awaken what God is doing inside of you. Whether that's salvation, like you've not given your life to Christ, then we want to awaken in you the reality of your need for Jesus. And then maybe you've been following Jesus, and what we want to do is awaken in you the reality that God has called you for specific ministry and purpose. And not only do we want to awaken that reality in you, but we want to empower you. We want to equip you to walk that out and fulfill it. And that happens in the context of relationships. So we don't want to open up these community groups just so you have a friend. Yes, we want you to have a friend, but we want you to see you fulfill the purposes that God has for your life. Amen. How many people in here you say, I do not want to fulfill my purpose? Raise your hand. Oh, I checked them. Anybody? How many people in here says, you know what, I want to fulfill what God has for me? Raise your hand. It's a longing and desire for all of our hearts, and that's what I want to see for you. And when I say the word planted, when I talk about being planted in a community, this is what I mean. I mean committed. What does this look like? It means that you choose to be vulnerable in relationships because you're planted. It means that you choose sacrifice in a relationship because you're planted. It means that you choose to love when it hurts because you're planted. It means that you're not going to look for greener pasture somewhere else because you've made a decision in your heart that I'm planted in this house. It means you choose to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and come meet us and tear down and set up and hang out with crying babies and then leave and give a high five and tear down because you're planted. Thou said, because you're planted. Because you're planted. I want to see you planted. Why? Because planted things grow. Right? Ask your neighbor, are you planted? That's pretty sad. Ask your neighbor, are you planted? Now ask the neighbor that you like second best and ask them if you're planted. All right, so this is my illustration, guys. I'm going to use this little guy, all right? So my son made it, and, he's up front. So Jocelyn, I didn't even know he was in here, so the son's calling me a liar, so he made another one. So Jocelyn made this, my daughter. So if you don't know, I have 4 kids. And anymore, I don't even know who I'm calling anymore. Like, I just yell, you know who you are, just get over here. I mean, there's so many of them. And, so they made this, I believe, for Mother's Day or something like that last year. That detail doesn't really matter, but let's give a round of applause for this beautiful little pot. All right, so I'm gonna use this as an illustration, and this right here is wherever God has called you to be, the community that God's called you to be. It could be the purposes that God's called you to be, but for today I want to use it as a context of community in regards to church, the local church, and Christ-centered relationships. And this right here is actually a toy that I found in my kid's basket last night. And it was purple and stuff. I painted it white, so hopefully it wasn't important because it's no longer purple and pink. But I needed a seed. So this is my seed, all right? So I got this little seed here just to kind of illustrate things. Now listen, I never use illustrations, so if I'm poor at this, come back next week and we'll have a better speaker. So what I see here is this is what God's called us to do, and this is the seed. And a lot of us, what we do is we don't even commit to the process to being planted. Like, this is you, this is your life. And you just kind of hang out around the pot. You hang out around the church. You may even lay on top of the soil, I don't know, but you just won't commit. You're afraid of it. You're afraid of commitment. And it's true about you even in your relationships with others. Like, you're dating the same girl for 4 years now and you won't ask her to marry you. Come on, grow up, ask her to marry you. Like, there's commitment issues, and a lot of times it happens in the context of even community and the church and so forth, that we're afraid to actually plant ourselves into a community. And so what happens is this seed never grows. Why? Because only planted things grow. That's what Jesus was referring to as a principle. Only planted things go. So there's that one group here that you won't plant yourself into anything. You're like, I get my Jesus time on my podcast. I listen to all these speakers on podcasts. I'm a nomadic Christian. I do what I want. I go where I want. I won't plant myself anywhere. Like, you can do that. Like, God will love you, but God will not build on an uncommitted person. He won't. And God does not create gypsies, spiritual gypsies, just to roam around. And so there's an importance of learning to plant yourself into a community. You're not going to find a perfect community anywhere. You're not. But when you find one that lines up with the values that you have, then plant yourself in that. So that's the first group. I would ask you to raise your hand if that's you, but I'm not going to. This other group is, you plant yourself, but then you abort the process. Like, you plant yourself, but then someone offends you. And you're like, he didn't talk to me like that, and you just leave. You pull your seed up and shoot. You ain't talking to me like that. Take my seed and go somewhere else. Offense or whatever it is. You as soon as you plant yourself, oh, well, I didn't like that teaching. Jeremy used an illustration, this crazy looking pot. And so since I didn't like it and it wasn't whatever, I'm leaving. Taking my seed and going somewhere else. And you have all the right in the world to do those things. But I'm afraid for you that you're not going to grow. There's people that do that. You abort the process. And it happens a lot of times, to be honest, even in marriages. Like, this is who I choose. And as soon as it requires work, as soon as it requires vulnerability or forgiveness or anything like that, you just kind of abort the process. And you may not have aborted it externally. You may still be in the marriage, but in your heart, you've aborted the process. And so there's that group. Like, you plant yourself somewhere, and then you pull yourself out the moment that it requires work. And to be honest with you, I see this in church a lot of times. A lot. Like, sheep like to move around. When I say sheep, I'm referring to not actual sheep, but people. that attend a church, and as soon as something doesn't go the way they want it to, or they don't like it, or it requires some form of effort and work, you just pull yourself out and move along. And then you got another group who you just pull the seed, because I don't know about you, but sometimes when you plant in life, it just takes a long time. Does it not? Like, I don't know if you ever grown grass, probably not. I'm growing grass and it feels like it takes forever. And you just watch, and it just doesn't seem like something's happening, anything's happening. And that can even happen when you plant yourself where God's called you to be. Like you plant yourself and you're waiting, all right, God, where's the fruit? Like, where's the fruit? And you're waiting, God, all right, where's the fruit? Where's the fruit? Like, where's the fruit? And what you do is you just pull it. And because of your doubt and your fears, and you decide to just never plant again. And I don't know the tension. There's a tension there. Like, I don't know what the proper timing is. Like, I don't have an answer for you. Like, okay, if you plant your seed in 3 years and 33 days, you will see fruit. Like, I don't know that. I don't. The timing is not up to us. That's up to God. But the planting is up to you and I. The planting is our responsibility. And the timing of that is up to God. And so what I want to ask you today, before I move on, is where are you at in this process? Like, have you hung out on the edge? Have you planted yourself and then pull yourself out? Planted yourself and pull yourself out, put your left foot in it. Sorry. Have you doubted the process altogether and just kind of pulled the seed because you don't want to wait out the process? Does that make sense to you? And so, and this is what scares me too, because I see people in this place, even in this room right here, that I know there's so much potential, and I don't know what's even there yet. Like, I just know it's there because you sense it, but it will never come to full fruition until you plant yourself. And I don't know what it is, and maybe this is for you. I don't know if you're just afraid of commitment, you're afraid someone's going to hurt you, you're afraid the church is going to let you down. Well, let me answer all those questions with yes, someone's probably going to hurt you. Yes, someone's going to let you down. But that's called doing life together. It's called cultivating relationships and building a community. Amen? Amen. So I want to challenge you with that. Now, this is the thing. There's this word in this passage, though, that kind of bothers me. Have you ever read scripture? I've mentioned this before, but you read a passage and you look at it and you're kind of like, I don't know if I like that passage. Anyone in here? I mean, there's sometimes I read something and I wish I never read it. And well, in this passage, when I was looking at this, we're going to dive back into it. John 2:24 says, truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies. I don't know about you, but die does not sound very good to me. Does that sound good to anyone else here? Dies. So I looked up the Greek word for this word, dies, and this is what it says. First off, it occurs 111 times in the New Testament, this idea of dying. And then it says it stresses the significance of the separation that always comes with divine closure. It stresses the importance of ending what is former to bring what naturally follows. And so the way I define it is your new season cannot begin until your old season ends. And so that word die is actually, if I was to define it, it's closing the door to anything that will keep you from being committed to the place that God has called you. And so that tells us that you can be planted, but still hold on to things that need to die, that keep you from actually bearing fruit in the season that you're in. Do you follow me? And so a lot of times, like, this, once again, I think marriage is a great illustration. You can be married, but your heart is still a bachelor or bachelorette. And so you won't reap the fruits of that marriage because your heart is somewhere else. Do you follow me? Another thing is, I see this all the time, is hashtag adulting. Anybody see that? Like, it's like, I'm going to hashtag adult something because I'm going to pretend that I'm an adult without actually committing to being an adult. There's this whole idea of I'm going to do something, but I'm actually not going to commit to it because my heart is actually somewhere else. And I think a lot of times it's with promiscuous relationships, sexual morality. You want the benefits of a committed relationship without the committed relationship, and that's a sin. It's a bad thing. And so what I want to challenge you today with is, like, you may have planted yourself, but I want to ask you something. Have you died? Meaning, have you closed the doors to everything in your life that keeps you from being committed to the season and the place that God has called you to? Because I think a lot of our issues and struggles that we are currently facing are often the result of not ending old habits, closing the door on old seasons, or even ending toxic relationships. Like, I think sometimes if we were honest with ourselves, a lot of the frustration in our life is because we're somewhere physically, but our heart is still connected somewhere else. And God is calling you today to close that door to those things. Whether it's habits, whether it's relationships, only you know what it is. And I think sometimes we have this frustration in our heart because we're not seeing the fruit that we want to see in our lives. And I have a question for you. One, first off, are you planted? Are you committed to a place? Are you committed to the purposes of God in your life? And two, have you died to your old ways? Have you died to the old you? Have you closed the door on that season of your life so you can reap the benefits of the life that you're in? Does that make sense to you? And so sometimes what's frustrating to me, and not in the sense of like a negative way, but it saddens me, is because I can see people get so mad at God. Like, God, you said if I did this, and this, it would work, and it doesn't work, I'm out of here. And we abandon the process. Because one, we won't plant ourselves, and then when we do plant ourselves, we still want to flirt with other things. And God is a jealous God. Not in the sense that, like, this negative way, like, everything you have is mine. No, He's jealous for what does belong to Him. Like, for example, I'm married. And I'm not jealous if my wife goes and spends time with other people or friends or things like that. But if she begins to give what's mine to someone else, then I'm jealous. I think in our relationship with God, a lot of times what belongs to Him, we give to other things. Our devotion, our commitment, our affection, our sacrifice. We give it to other things, and we put God on the back burner, and we wonder why our lives have no fruit in them. Because you're planted, but you haven't died. Because you've committed, but you left this door open to other things in your life. Whether it's, like I said, old habits, toxic relationships, behaviors. And I want to see you grow. Is it okay if I push on you for a moment? Is that okay? I want to see you grow. Like, I'm failing my job if I sit here and just tickle your ears and, like, say happy things that make you feel good inside. I'm not doing what my job is to do, which is to awaken and empower you to follow Jesus. And so sometimes that requires pushing. And I want to push on you. Because not that I want something from you, I want something for you. Like, if we want to fill up the sanctuary, it's really easy. Like, we could do something as simple as promise everyone $10 if they come to the church on Sunday. It'll fill up real fast. There's gimmicks and tricks and things like that you can do to fill up the sanctuary. It's not about filling up a sanctuary. It's about awakening a people. God doesn't care about events. He cares about cultivating and creating a people. And that happens in the context of relationships and community. And if you don't plant yourself in one and die to your old ways, you won't see that fruit in your life. And I know some of you are frustrated and you're exhausted and you're tired and all these different things. And I want to ask you, is it because you're not planted? And if you are planted, have you closed the door to all these other things in your life that will keep you from being committed to the place, the season, the pot that God has called you to be in? Amen? You are not going to see growth in your current season, worship team, until you close the door to your old. You're not going to see growth. Guys, listen, don't be distracted. I want your eyes here. You're not going to see growth in your current season until you close the door to your old. Listen, I'm going to say it again. You are not, like, there's no way around this. You're not going to see growth in this season, in this place, in the relationships God has called you to be in, until you close the doors to your old ways, your old season of life. There's another thing that kind of bothers me about this passage, because I think sometimes we use the sovereignty of God as just an excuse to be lazy. Like, I believe in the sovereignty of God. Like, how we ended up in this school was the sovereignty of God. But I think sometimes we use grace and the concept of God's sovereignty as just a reason to do nothing. Like, it's going to work out. And I don't see that anywhere in Scripture. Like, God's purposes will be accomplished. And there's this word in this passage that catches me. And it's this one word. It says, truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth, so it means being planted, unless it's planted and dies, it remains alone. And then Jesus says this, but if. It's that one word, if. If it dies, it bears much fruit. That tells me that you and I have a choice. It's up to you if you want to be committed and planted to the things that God has called you to. It's up to you if you want to close the doors on the old behaviors and ways and season so that you can reap the benefits of the season that you're in now. It's up to you. I can't force you into it. It's not going to just happen. I don't think your destiny is guaranteed. I really don't. I think God works hand in hand with you to fulfill His purposes through this earth. And I believe that in this season, and especially with this message, that God is calling us to plant ourselves into a local church. And hopefully this is the church. I would be happy. Plant yourselves in a local church and then close the doors to anything that prevents you from being committed to the place that God has called you to be. Because that's how you're going to grow. That's how you're going to grow. If you think about it, what Jesus is saying here is true. It's a principle about so many areas of your life. Your workplace, your marriage, your relationships, your kids, and community and relationships. So this is what I want to do. I want everyone to close their eyes, actually. I just want you to just, and I want to ask this question. The first question I want to ask you is, are you planted in the family of God? Meaning, have you surrendered your life to Jesus?